All right, everyone. So thank you for coming. If you don't know, this is BioAM. So give you a chance to leave if you don't know what this is. But so BioAM is a community-focused group that's focused on building a bio-business presence here in Rochester. And there's one person I wanted on my list for a long, long time to speak to the group, and that's Judy. Judy is really, I personally, is one of my heroes. She's a pioneer. Oh, not that bad. She's really a pioneer in the bio-business industry. In fact, you were one of the earliest spin-outs of Mayo. And that's been a tremendous motivation to a lot of other companies that have come after that you were able to do that, and all the trials and tribulations that you've had getting this company going, and it's been super successful, and it's amazing. And I wanted Judy to come and share her story with the group because I think it really is something that will inspire others as we continue to build companies here in town and elsewhere to be really successful. So and you're celebrating your 5-year anniversary, I think, this month of Mill Creek, which is awesome. So without further ado, you can have the remote.
Well, Jamie, thank you for the wonderful introduction.
And the shot.
Yeah, this is BioAM After Dark, and if you're here for a speaker, you might want to go, because I'm just a talker. And I'll have a PowerPoint, but we probably won't follow it. So if you see a slide that you want me to come back and talk about, we'll do that. But we'll see where it leads. I always talk, we'll just see where it leads us and where we go. Chabi said, heavy on the science, so I put about 23 slides in on science. we'll spend a lot of time there. So, no, we started, Mill Creek Life Sciences actually started a phone call for me in July of 2008. My phone rang on a Saturday morning, and it was Al Dietz. And Al said, Judy Lundy, I need a business plan by Monday. And he always calls me Judy Lundy, like my name is Mary Jane or Mary Ann. And I'm like, what? No, I said, I haven't written a business plan since graduate school, which actually I'm a mid-career changer, so it wasn't that long ago. But it seemed like I said, I haven't written. He goes, no, I said, you got to tell me more than that. So if you know Al, he like in 30 seconds gave me 10 paragraphs and said, talk to you Monday. And I was like, wow, what? I'm not going to do that. But he's a pretty persistent guy too, and I think that's probably why we got along, and that's where it all started. So on Monday, when he expected to have this done, I said, I got a piece of paper and a pencil today, and we're going to talk. So we started there. And I always call we're kind of like Mr. Clean and the Red-Headed Stepchild. That's the subtitle of this. Because when we started this, as Jamie said, there wasn't an accelerator. There was a big conflict of interest at Mayo about docs starting these companies. So Al said, he's like, write the business plan. I can't start this because this, that. And we had to get a congressional, from the Mayo Board of Conflict of Interest, that it would be okay for him to be, even the most he could be was on the board or a scientific advisor. So he was Mr. Clean, because I would send him an email and he'd be, you can't send that to me at Mayo. And I'm like, what? No, you can't send that to me at Mayo. And I'm like, well then give me your cell phone number, And then, and I call myself the red-headed stepchild, because when I came over to found the company and it was announced, Mayo was like, well, she's allied health. She can't do that. And I'm like, too late, I've already quit my job. So we became like I was like a red-headed stepchild over here. It was like, well, we didn't think about that. So we were pioneers in a sense, but we were really Mr. Clean and the red-headed stepchild. And that lasted for a long time. We'll talk about that a little bit hopefully in the story if it goes that direction. But in 2013 then, I led the company as a CEO until 2013, and then at that point, these things started to happen, and then Al could become the CEO. We had transferred our technology over, and we're being a real company, and so manufacturing is going, I said, I need to focus on that avenue of that. And so take this hat and run with it. So we see Al, we always say about a nanosecond a week. So the management, Al is the CEO, that happened in 2013. I'm the COO and co-founder, also the president. And Al's brother is a board member and a co-founder. And it was actually Steve Dietz and I that founded the company because of the Mayo conflict of interest thing. And then brought Al in as a scientific advisor to get all that. So that was so we could stay clean and then not send those emails. So our first business plan was written in 2008, and then in 2013, we got our certificate of business was May 27th of 2010. So the baby goes to kindergarten this year. And it's been an amazing and very fast-paced 5 years. So we moved into the bio-business building in the fall of 2011. We have 5,000 square feet back here. Right behind that wall there is probably the biggest vacuum pump you ever want to see. Al says we could milk a herd of dairy cows, but we haven't tried that yet. We have a little trouble with elevators. But this is our clean room. We've got production workers. We have 2 full-time, pretty much full-time FTEs, about 7 to 10 contractors. We currently, last year in 2014, we had 34 customers that we shipped to. And we sent 2 shipments this week from our supply depot in London because most of our clients are in Europe, so we needed to get that set up to help us get things to them a little bit cheaper. We're hoping, we'll see when that shakes out and how that's going to be. We're also working pretty diligently, and we have for 3 years with some major global distributors. So it just takes time. If anybody here is thinking about doing this, it just takes time. And twice as much money to the bank. But what is it we do? What do we do in this space? We provide a specialized protein for growing stem cells. For years and years, they use fetal calf serum to grow stem cells. How many people are stem cell people here? Okay. And it was plentiful, the cows didn't complain, it worked well. About 10 years ago, a couple of things happened to change that whole landscape. And one was mad cow disease, and the other was they started using cells as drugs. The #1 prescribed drug at Mayo Clinic is blood and blood products, cells. But then they started doing other things about 10 years ago. They found out Dendron came on and they started out doing a lot of cellular therapies. And what happened when one of those early trials was a reaction for a human against that cow protein. And so it started, that coupled with the BSE gave the FDA pause. And they thought at the time that there was going to be some kind of a mandate to say you can't use fetal calf serum. And so the powers to be came to Dr. Dietz. He was running the human cell therapy lab at Mayo. And they said, what are you going to do to get us off fetal calf serum? So, good scientist that he is, he did his research and he said, gee, 25 years they've been using platelet lysate for protein. People, the portion of it, he said, I'm part of the blood bank. They're throwing away platelets down the hall. So he went down, he got some, told his technicians, go get some platelets and follow this recipe and make some things. So they came back to him and he said, do it again. So they did it again. And if you say back in the world of validation, 1 is luck, 2 is coincidence, 3 is validation, he said do it 1 more time. And so they came back and they said, we're not doing it again. But it worked beyond anyone's wildest dreams. And they saw some noise and some things that they needed to clean up and get it to work, so that they spent a bit of time on that and applied for the patent, and as you say, the rest is kind of history. So, long story short, really what we are, we don't grow cells at Mill Creek, we just make the chicken that goes in the chicken soup. It's just the protein portion of that medium, is all it is. So the problem we're solving is the mad cow and using cells as drugs. The alternative, there's a couple of them. One is you can still use fetal calf, and they are, because the FDA hasn't mandated yet They're waiting for someone to say that there is a good alternative to fetal calf serum. So we have one of our early on phase 3 scientists wants to be the first to show that. But there'll never be enough platelets in this country to support regenerative medicine, I don't think. But as you talk to some of the big ones, they say if you get 1 or 2 good indications, you'll have decades of work to do. So we don't want all the business, we just want 3 big major indicators and to be the best that we can be at that. And the other thing they do, cell-free mediums took on a big burst of energy at that time. But they're expensive, and at about passage 5, the cells mutate, so that the cells that you started with, they're not the same cells after passage 5. They acclimate to that bovine protein, and do that. A lot of the researchers were making their own, in their own lab, because they had the same thing. They all read the same papers. But what they found is they had a lot of inconsistent batch to batch, because they were making it from one person at a time, and my platelets are going to get activated different than your platelets, and we're even seeing regional differences in the platelets. So a lot of that was going on. Part of the patent coming out of Mayo is, we call that noise, and they figured out how to get that noise out of there. So, and then with researchers in the lab, was they had limited supply of platelets to go and draw. Because a lot of them aren't in blood centers or transfusion centers to do that. So the science, here we go, everybody, buckle up, we're going to do science now. Okay. A lot of the drugs and the pharmaceutical companies have taken amazing care of us with penicillin to treat us with antibiotics, more and more and more drugs. But what do the drugs really do? They may slow a disease progression. They mostly are targeted at treating symptoms, but very few of them actually do the healing that the body needs, right? Do that. So what the body does need, what does a body need to heal? That's the role of our stem cells every single day. Under our skin and around every organ is a layer of fat. And you'll starve to death before you'll use that fat up. And what they found within the last 8 years is that the fat cells are loaded with stem cells. They used to think they had to go to the stem or to the marrow to get the stem cells, and now they have found that they can just take a 1-inch fat biopsy, digest it up, put a little cell magnet on it, if you will, pull out the stem cells and expand them up. And those are the healing things. When you cut yourself, or when you break a bone, there isn't anything magic that happens. There's nothing that happened here except to bring the tissues close together. And what happens during that process is, the first thing that happens is you form a clot. And then you get some inflammation. If you ever cut yourself, okay, first you get the little scab, and then it gets red and kind of itchy, and those sort of things. The next step is the cells rush in. Cells talk to each other, and they're sending signals all the time. The cells run in to fill that gap up. And this is where they're bringing in mesenchymal stem cells. Those stem cells that are right there in the ready in that fat tissue run in to fill that up and start building new tissue. And even the new skin isn't real skin. Remember you call it, it's kind of like baby skin. It's red, it's pink, it's kind of tender. But then it starts maturing, and you get the regeneration and the replacement with scar tissue and the new cells. So we know that, remember, we're using platelets, and for years and years, that's what they thought the function of platelets was, just a clot. And now, they really have started looking at this, and they're saying, they're playing a far bigger role than we ever thought. Dr. D's other hat that he wears is cancer vaccine, and he would go up to the pathology lab and get brain tumors, bring them down, and he said, without exception, there would always be clots. Those tumors would be full of clots. So he said to the pathologist one day, you ever notice these things are full of clots? And he said, yeah. He said, I've been doing that 25 years, they're always there. Every one of them, they're always like that. And he said, you wonder why? He said, that's for you to figure out. Well, they think that part of that is part of this cells signaling that they do realize that there is something amiss there. And so they're trying to elicit this reaction, but it gets overwhelmed with the tumor cells and goes away. So this just says the mesenchymal stem cells are dispersed throughout the body. They're in fat. If you ever talk to, the first meeting, I have to tell this funny story. First meeting Elle sent me to was called IFATS, the International Federation of Adipose Tissue, in Miami, Florida. And I walked in, and I'm like, whoa, there wasn't a wrinkle in the place. I'm like, loaded with plastic surgeons. I'm like, 1-800-L. I don't know if I'm at the right one. These guys are, he's like, just wait. Well, then pretty soon the scientists came in and then it looked normal. But they really, what are they doing? Liposuction all the time. And so they're banking, they're building huge banks for come in, give us your liposuction while you're young, and we'll put it away and give it to you later. But that was a great meeting. And you know what? I got a great lead out of that meeting. So you just never know where things are going to come from. But what you have to do when you get the stem cells, when you have it, they don't know what they want to be when they grow up. But these are the stem cells that are going to the 5 different lineages for your bones, your muscles, your nerves, and all those other things. Well, the really smart guys at Mayo figured out how to take that puddle of stem cells and get it to differentiate into cardiomyocyte-like cells. And that licensed that technology out, and that's now Cardio 3. And that was one of the first quarter consultations at Mayo, and that started this company. Al said, I have been working with the lab who just licensed their technology, and I can't make it for them anymore. Write the business plan, we're going to put it upstairs and get it licensed out, but you're the only person I know with an MBA, said. I'm like, oh, wow. We got to swipe in his circle. So, anyway, that's kind of how that whole thing started, but they figured out, they put this little mix of cocktails on, those stem cells will beat in the Petri dish. They just sit there and beat away, and when they touch, they beat together. So that was and that was one of the lucky things for us as we rolled out. We had a customer. And we were really lucky. We know that. So in the clinic, there's a lot of things going on. This is kind of what Elle's lab's working on now. They've got some stem cell therapy going for ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. We won't know for another year how that's going. However, they're still enrolling patients, so then that's always a positive sign. Multiple system atrophy is a disease, it's the muscles, but it's very much like Lou Gehrig's. These are bad, bad things. They're using it for renal stenosis, Crohn's disease. There's some work going on for graft versus host disease, hip replacement. We have this is what's going on at Mayo. We have our customers, we have Cardio 3 doing hearts, and that kind of came out of Mayo. We have a customer in Australia doing arthritis, and a lot of the musculoskeletal things like that. We have a client in Canada that's doing MS. We have a client here in this country who's doing pediatric bone disease. So the kids who have those brittle bones, they stand and their bones crush and they don't ever get very tall. They're doing phase 3 on that. And I ran into Young Ping at a meeting last year, and I said, how are the kids doing? How are they doing? He said, Judy, they're growing. How cool is that? All we are is the chicken in the chicken soup, but we get to give people this hope for better treatments. And that's what I keep saying. What Mill Creek is, we're just the chicken in the chicken soup. But at the end of the day, we're hope for better treatments and hope for a better quality of life. Because we can heal that instead of keeping people alive, we can give them a life. To go back with the Cardio 3, they're now in their phase 3. In December, they closed phase 3 in Europe. They're going to start phase 3 in Asia and the US. They're building up on 5, so that'll be happening. But the early patients from phase 1 are about 5 years out. Remember, when you start in those early phases, it's the sickest of the sick. And so some of them, most of them in that early phase were bedridden. And now, 5 years later, they're riding bikes. Not all of them, but some of them. So we've not just kept them alive, but you've given them a life because you can heal. And now I sound like Billy Graham, so okay, how do we solve the problem? We use expired human platelets. Remember we said the shelf life of a platelet is 5 days. On day 6, it was biological waste and $25 for the blood banks to get rid of it. So we are not only hope, but we're also a green company because we're recycling. And there's actually been quite a bit of competition for this now. But these platelets are approved for human use. The blood banks do a wonderful job of taking care of us. Probably the only business ever that can predict what their usage is going to be, but they draw in excess of 15%. Why? Because you never know when a tornado is going to drop out of the sky and there won't be a platelet ready to use. So they take really good care of us. And so on day 6, here's a little bucket, we'll take all you've got. Well, early on it was that way, and now there's some pretty fierce competition for that. We have contracts with some of the major blood service organizations, and we're working really hard. And that's going to be the key to going forward with this. I'm also talking to some people, because what can we do now with Grow Self? There's a group out east growing platelets. So if we exceed what's in outdated platelets, I think we always have to be looking at that horizon on what's the next supply chain going to be. Because that's right now, this is where we're at. But these platelets are tested and approved for human use, and there's usually an excess. Now the blood banking and the doctors are getting, the surgeries now are getting so good. What are they doing? Laparoscopic surgery. So they're not using as much blood. So their use is going down. They have a downward pressure to use less waste, while we put a demand that we want to take that. So we have to broaden that scope and work against that and try to get a business model that fits us and fits them. So anyway, this is just, I don't know if I needed that, but it's platelets are the key to clotting and initiation of healing. And this is that whole new thinking, this initiation of healing. We used to just think it was clotting. They give lots and lots of places at the clinic after open heart surgery because they put you on a heart bypass machine, put you on blood thinner, and wipe everything out so you don't clot during surgery. Then, when they're going to start taking you off of that, they throw you back all the platelets back at you. So they're getting better and better at that as well. The other big use of platelets in the clinic, people on chemo, because it wipes out all their cell types. And you'll hear people saying, talk to you about if they're going to have their next round, they're waiting for cells to come back out. So we started making this for Mayo clinical trials. This is what L started for, and they filed the intellectual property. But every trial at Mayo uses this because you use the platelet lysate at half the concentration of fetal calf serum, and your cells grow twice as fast. So if you're a patient waiting for cells, you get your treatment twice as fast. Always think about that because I lived that life. Platelet neck is used to grow stem cells. If you look at the life chain, we can go into the cardio 3s, but by the time a company buys a patent and starts their bioreactors and decides how they're going to do their treatment, they're long set their protocols. So we need to get to the researchers and the early adapters to get them to grow their stem cells and set their protocols with this. I call it chicken in the chicken soup. Al calls it picks and shovels. But we're just a tool in this whole big regenerative medicine field that I think that is just in its infancy and ready to blossom. And that's the foundation of our business. And we went out with that in 2008 at probably the worst economic time ever, right? What were we thinking? Anyway, so we tried to do some fundraising early on, and we got a little bit of money, and then everyone kept saying, are you curing cancer? And we're like, no, but we're helping. We're doing, some of these other things. And everybody wanted what I called strapless and sequence. They wanted a hook. And so Al's a really smart guy, and he works a lot of long hours, and that's why we don't see him much. But his first hat when he came to Mayo was cancer vaccine. And so what he'd been working, I remember I said he was going up and getting those tumors from up there, and he went up, and what he found was that he could make a cancer vaccine for glioblastoma multiforme, or the brain tumor. And what you do is you tumor reduce, when they do that surgery, they tumor reduce, and he was taking that tumor. Before this, they hadn't been able to grow the tumor cells. Wouldn't grow in fetal cancer, but it grew in the juju. It grew in platelet lysate. So he would go and get those cells, then he'd have what he needed for that tumor cell. And then he would, what they do is, we know that, because what's the question you always hear? Why can't they cure cancer? Why does the body let it grow? Why? Because it recognizes it as self. And the body, unless you have an autoimmune disease, is not going to attack itself. But we know that if you've had bacterial infection or viral infection, it's the dendritic cells that educate the immune system that says that's foreign protein. Remember why we don't want to use cow. And it goes after it. So there's that. If there's some way to educate those dendritic cells to that tumor, then we've got some magic going on. So what they did was they just go up and get some of the tumor, put it on the dendritic cells that we all have circulating around. It's how our body takes care of us. And then that dendritic cell is educated and knows when it sees the tumor, that's what I want to get. That's not my enemy. So grow as many cells as you need, put it on the dendritic cell, and give it back to the patient. Theoretically, what should happen? Should go and find those tumor cells and do it. There are 3 patients that have been treated now, 3 of this. Once again, because it's early and you always want to be with safety for the patient, you don't know how the trial is. But you always kind of look if they're still doing it, because in a phase 1 trial, you get 1 patient, the sickest of the sick, everything else has failed. You get 1 patient, they'll treat that patient. If everything's okay, 3 months, they'll open the gate and you can do 1 more. That second patient is okay and you don't do any harm, then they'll give you a 3rd patient. So we've had 3 patients, but we won't know for a while how that's going. And then that's your phase 1 trial, is safety. Is it safe? Do no harm. Because those patients are so sick that if you get any efficacy or positive results, you'll be very, very lucky. So phase 2 is then, it's an efficacy trial and a dosing trial. It says, if the FDA looks at your data from phase 1 and says, yeah, okay, we'll let you do this many patients for phase 2, what you can check then for is a response. A response, and then if you're lucky, you can also start figuring out what the dose is going to be. So you get a few more patients, and they open up the exclusion criteria, they open that window a little bit more, so you get more patients. Phase 3 is a large randomized, so if you get through phase 2, then okay, let's show us your stuff. Maybe it was just the group of patients you used or just luck still. So then you get a larger group of patients to try, and then if that goes, you have about an 80% chance that you'll get the funding to take it all the way to market. Because the other thing that you have to happen in phase 2, right, we're all business people, you better have your reimbursement, that Medicare and the insurance companies are going to reimburse it. Because just because it's good medicine doesn't mean that it will go. So those are some of the hurdles that you have to start thinking about. So we're still in phase 1. The beauty of this was that this was paid for by a private company. It's carried on at Mayo, so they're actually doing this, but it was a private foundation paying for that phase 1 trial. So we've been really lucky with it. So our second product is a cancer vaccine. Take the tumor, put it with the general cell, and let it do its thing. The GBM vaccine there's 10,000 newly diagnosed cases a year. Most of them have a 50% non-response rate to the current therapies. So we started this last year, and it will last 3 years. It takes about 9 years to bring this forward into the commercial market, and lots of money. So the tumor just acts as a antigen, and you add it to the dendritic cell. You're just giving that cell the smarts that it needs. So, and what they look like. So the question is, how do you get enough target? They were doing this with lymphomas. They were actually done some of this, and if you go out in the literature, you can see there's other people working on this, but they haven't been able to grow the tumor cells. The patients, I think the protocol is that they get 15 or 16 injections. It used to be you could only give what the tumor, however big the tumor was, and however many cells you were lucky enough to get. But again, when we say you can grow tumors with it. So they've had 19 tumors, 78% success rate growing over there. So 4 times better than the next method. Now the other thing you can do is with these tumor lines that I get excited about. I think it's great we can do that, but I think we'll reach more people and get out there. Is if you have a tumor line, there's probably, just pick a number, 20. There may be 20 different types of these tumors, and everyone's might be a little different. But I probably thought if you can type those tumors, you can build a library. And then when you go back here, grow the tumor. I got to back this all the way down here. Put the tumors in here, put the chemo in here, because you might want to do a little bit of chemo in the meantime and say, I can grow the cells and say, this is the chemo that works on that tumor. Because right now, if I'm a cancer patient, what I do, this is the best drug that we have for you right now. It's working on 80% of the patients. I have a 20% chance that's not going to work on my type. And you don't know until 3 months down the road. But here we can speed that up and then within a couple weeks know what chemo, what type they are and what chemo they have. So we can license these cells out to other diagnostic facilities and say, type your tumors and start doing this kind of thing. So we have the first right of refusal for 20 of those glioblastoma cell lines from there. We've taken 3. Andrew didn't even know this, did he? See, I forget to tell you those things. Andrew works for him. So, but the summary of what do? We play a role in saving lives. We have 3 phase 3 studies going. There's a lot of them going out there we really don't know. We have one in Egypt. We have one in the UAE, 2 in Italy. And people are, until they publish, they play their cards pretty close. Because regenerative medicine is coming on strong, and it's strong in Europe. So we have, and then we have the GBM cancer vaccine. And I just keep saying, where is the chicken in the chicken soup? We want to get hope for better treatments and a hope for better quality of survival. I want to say, I'm going to call out the early supporters we have here. The Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation gave us a $25,000 loan to start with. Man, we thought it was $5 million. We could open a checking account. But more than that, it was the confidence that they had in us to move forward. And then Minnesota Deed with the Angel Tax Credit, Home Federal, early banking with lines of credit, and just all kinds of advice and help. And all the foreign transfers that come through, it's been awesome. The U.S. Commerce Department has been very, very helpful to me as we opened up and how in the world do I figure out how to ship this thing. And I had to go into the UAE and go to the embassy and all this stuff, and I'm like, writing, sending things and all those sorts of things. But wonderful people there who really believed in us. And actually there was a guy there and he did a whole world market study for us where all the clusters were for regenerative medicine. So, while the accelerator is here now, remember we were kind of playing under the radar. Regen Theranostics was upstairs and they would like not answering phone calls because it wasn't embraced yet by Mayo. So when we see Mayo Accelerator, it's like, is that an oxymoron? Or what's going on there? So, because we were Mr. Clean and the redheaded stepchild starting out. So the whole, in 5 short years, it's just amazing what's happened in Rochester and in this building. Questions? Comments?
Why does it take, why do you have to do so much in Europe versus here?
A couple of things, and probably the biggest thing is the whole political landscape, because our former president dropped all of the research on stem cells. And even though it was embryonic stem cells, whenever anybody heard stem cells, they're like, whoa. In fact, when I went to IFATS, I got lots of funny stories from there. The guy came up to the table and goes, what do you do? I said, well, we have this media supplement to grow stem cells. He goes, that's illegal. I said, no, this is mesenchymal stem cells. He goes, that's illegal. I said, why are you at this meeting? So I don't know what, if he was like, you know, I thought, well, I'm going to get arrested. And I was like, hello, Al. Today, I don't look good in orange jumpsuits, and I don't think they're comfortable. So, yeah, but I think that was the whole landscape changed on that. Now, I think they're catching up quickly, but the European market, the worldwide market, is ahead of us. But I think you see success over there, and it doesn't take long to catch up. And then look, you know, what Cardio 3 is going to bring here. No, that'll be a whole.
Yeah. So, would you say your biggest challenges are finding other firms to use your product, or getting your supply? I mean, if you had to, is it the front end that's more challenging, or is it the getting users for your product?
It's a two-pronged approach, because we're working with a multinational for distribution, and even Cardio, they say, show us that you can secure the supply. Show us that you can secure that supply. So we go out and say, you know, try to get that, and now it was easy a couple of years ago, but hey, yeah, but we couldn't take anything. We've got our rooms out there are pretty much lined with freezers, full of platelets that we're bringing in. We like to bring them and hold them about 4 to 6 months before we use them. But it's a two-pronged approach. One, and then we need to get into those things. Now, what's going to really help us, last year at the meeting in Europe, a gal from Denmark, Ries Hasvalet, I can't even say that right, so if there's anybody who speaks Danish. Anyway, she presented a paper, a poster, and she compared us to the competition that was out there. Now, our competition is stiff. They came in about a year and a half ago now, and they're multinational, and they could start this on pocket change. But what has really helped us is that we've got experience. We're the only ones that we know of that have phase 3 experience, clinical trial experience going into it. So we're competing with them for platelets. And then you have to, you know, when Dr. Horowitz publishes his pediatric trial, he's kind of the father of this whole thing in the U.S., it's going to blossom. And we can tell when the publications come out in certain things, then the website gets more hits, there's more requests for samples. So we're going to be, mostly how we get our customers has been through conferences and the website. And the conferences in Paris, they loved these cows. Couldn't keep them on the table. It was so funny. But you just don't know what's going to happen. But they're using, the thing with platelet lysate, you can grow cells you haven't been able to grow before. Because there's cellular recellularization going on one day. And in endothelial cells. And you can grow that in platelet lysate. You can't grow them very well in fetal calf unless you add lots and lots of growth hormones to them. And Al can grow them with one cytokine.
Did you ever see yourself being just using primary platelets versus expired, or is that, do you ever see that happening, just doing a...
I do see that happening. Yeah. I do see that, and I do see that happening for 2 reasons. One is we're going to exceed the outdated, and 2, it's just, yeah, we're going to exceed that outdated platelet stuff, and then we're just going to have to pay donors to get enough. We're gonna
Please
have to
leave your
move it.
platelets at the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
Put a wine bar, have a little plate.
Yeah, so it's gonna happen that we will. They don't work as well because when platelets don't have a nucleus, they're a ribbon of a megakaryocyte. They're just cell fragments. So that's why their shelf life is only 5 days. They're starting to break down. And this is a lysate because we want all the goodness that's inside. Because inside is there's growth factors, we don't know. Al says he spent $200,000 trying to characterize that and found out that there's no one single thing. We do think it's a lipid, there's a lipid component in there that makes it all work and pull together. But yeah, we think at some point we will end up going to that. And it'll be expensive because to process a unit is $1,500 for the testing. That's when you donate your platelets, it's just very expensive to do the testing on those. So that's why it's a beautiful thing with this model to do that and take that and turn it around into something.
Can you talk a little bit about when you were setting up Mill Creek and were trying to recruit talent for Mill Creek? Was there a willingness, or is there a willingness in this town to work for startups versus a large corporate entity? Is that changing?
Yeah, we worried about that. And Chavi's question was, what about recruiting help and stuff? We worried about that because, Mayo has premium wages and benefits and all those sort of things. And definitely that's true. And we do see that sometimes. But it's amazing the people that walk through your door. It's amazing. Every time something would come out in the paper, we'd get resumes in to do that. And there's a lot of people that don't want big and little. And one day I was sitting there, we're kind of tucked back in here, and before the other accelerator was there, nobody really knew we were there. And I was sitting there one morning, it's 20 after 11. I remember that because I had a meeting at 11:30. And this guy walked in the door and I thought, he's lost. And he said, can I help you? And he said, what's Mill Creek? I'm just up here doing some business and what's Mill Creek? So I gave him the elevator speech and I said, are you looking for a job? And he said, I'm a 25-year veteran of Dow Chemical, PhD chemistry. I just wonder what this life science company is. Are you looking for a job? I said, no, I'm looking to volunteer. And so I'm like, I got to be in a meeting, but call me this afternoon at 3 o'clock. And so he came. It was just me at that point, because for a lot of months, I worked all alone there. It was like, and we were getting ready for an audit. We had to have our GMP audit done, and those things. There wasn't, unless somebody added a couple days onto the week, it wasn't going to happen. So anyway, he came back, and I said, what are you doing in Rochester, Minnesota? He said, my wife and I were male snots, and she was diagnosed with breast cancer. We moved here for a treatment. I said, how's she doing? And he said, she died 7 months ago. I said, I know exactly. Because it was 7 months after my husband died, the phone rang, and Al said, right in the business. Said, so I talked to him just a little bit about that, and then I said, how many hours do you want to work? He said, well, I said, give me a resume and come back and we'll talk about hours. And I said, Al, you got to, I said, where do you find these people? I'm just talking away, you know? And even then, he was like, don't tell people this. We were Platelet Inc. for a long time. Because he just, don't tell people. Why? Okay. So anyway, so Tom came back and met Al, and Al said to him, what are you thinking for Alex? He said, I was thinking. He said, my son's got a cabin up north, and my daughter's in Chicago, and take some time off and go on here and go. And I said, but I was thinking, Monday through Thursday, 8 to 5. You gotta be kidding me. He worked 60 hours a week. He got us through that audit. And then, and I said, we're gonna wear you out, we're gonna wear you out. And I remember McGladrey saying, do whatever you can to keep it. But he was awesome. He just came in and did anything we wanted. He was in Al was, we were doing the tech transfer across from Mayo, so there was a Sunday group working. He was there 60 hours a week. It was like, and then he said, I'm going to take a trip. He did a lot of traveling with his kids, and then he said, I don't think I'm going to come back. But he still stops in to see us. And he ran a couple of the validation studies that we did, and it's amazing, you know, where you find people in and all that. But we do worry about competing with them. And so far, the people we have actually have an express came in and said, gee, we have this guy, Ken, he and his wife, he's a trailing spouse. His wife, and I said, oh, we have no money. You know, we have no money, we can't afford a chemical engineer. And he said, yeah, we can. Yeah. So we talked to him, now we have, he's still with us for another year. So there are people out there to do that. I think what we need to be concerned about now is we're going to need hands for this. We're going to need GMP hands in Rochester. So I always call it's that middle class that we need to get in here. The worker bees, the long-term, the GMP documentation, the logistics people to do that. So I think we need to start developing programs to get those in, get that talent developed.
How many employees do you have now? How many employees? Is that?
How many employees? I'm embarrassed to tell you this. I have 2 full-time. We have 2 full-time, and we have about 8 or 9 contractors. And that's the beauty of it. We have quite a few of those that have come over from Mayo. They love the startup environment. We're kind of crazy to do this, I think. You know, you have to be just a little bit off plumb to come in every day and keep going away. So we're looking at expanding that. We're 5 years old now, and that's what I said. You know, I'm looking at a different role. I'm looking. Somebody else has to grow this company. We are a global company. We need to do scale up. We need to do a lot of the shipping, logistics. In the next 2 to 3 years, it's going to expand. I keep telling the guys that we're doing one lot at a time. We got to start thinking. I'm thinking tanker trucks in the back, not 50-gallon drums, in order to do this. So there's going to be lots and lots of changes. But we are. You know, the baby is going to kindergarten. It's going to take its next phase. We've been incredibly lucky. And that's the only word I can say for a lot of us. It's people at the right time. It's meeting people at the right time, and people are so, not in Rochester, because everybody was like hiding them, the redheaded stepchild, but willing to help. Now, in the last 5 years, that's changed. It really, really has. But it was before, it would be like, hey, who's listening? Some of you been there, but it's the truth. But it's fun to see the people moving around in both the accelerators and things going on. But it was a different landscape, not that long ago.
So are you looking to expand the market in Asia, being an important market? Right now, I guess Europe is.
Yeah, well, we have a small distributor in Taiwan. Mm-hmm. We ship to Australia, Singapore, Taiwan. We have shipped samples to Japan and Korea. That's a hard market to do. The shipping is a real issue over there. Just because we have to send stuff on dry ice. So it's expensive. But yeah, the group that's doing the arthritis over there, they're really get exciting. The hope is, I mean, you just get exciting emails from people, and they said, it went great, we got through regulatory, and you know, we didn't have any issues, and we're all really excited here. So he thinks about June, so we're, you know, ready. Everybody will be busy working when we get that contract and we'll get that one through. So, but we do know that we're going to have to do European manufacturing probably within the next couple of years. Because anytime you're doing anything that happens with cells as drugs, what is the FDA or any regulatory? What's the redundancy? What happens if another tornado comes through Rochester, Minnesota? So how fast can you be back up in the business? Because you have patients waiting for treatments.
So with the potential demand that you feel about for people.
Truthfully, the other thing is, hey, they're doing stem cells for hearing. I am on the list. Actually talked to a lady who had that done, and she said, it was great, so I have a card.
So no, I was just going to say, with you and actually some other companies potentially looking for people qualified in this GMP process, do you foresee that you'll be looking for people ready to go, or do you foresee having a training program in place to?
I think we have to train our own right now.
Yeah.
People just don't. That's when I talk about building those skills, that GMP skill. You know, I was at a conference a couple weeks ago, and there's a lot of GMP in the community colleges, these programs. So in the cities, there's a couple of them that they talk about. They can't get students into it. So it's like, while we're doing, I'm all for STEM, while we're doing STEM, we gotta reach to those kids for those jobs. And she said, there was one guy there, and he said, I'm gonna have to close my program now. I have jobs in my community that can't get people, but I can't get kids into the program because they don't know about it. So I think we have to do a better job of educating, because we need skills at all levels. You know, when we look at our companies, we have the production, we have the scientists, we have the release testers and the technicians and the shippers and the cleaning people, but that has to be GMP. Even the cleaning is at a different level. The documentation is at a different level. So, you know, it's new medicine, it's new treatment. We have a whole new career path for every single level. And the thing with GMP, you can't predict who's going to be successful with that. You think you can, but GMP is, I always say, I think you have to be obsessive compulsive or just a tad bit. Everybody, every time, all the time. And you can't take shortcuts. There can't be anybody's way but the documented way. And if you get somebody who's really creative and like, hey, I'm going to try this, you just, whoa, you have an event. You have to write an event. It's like you deviated from the way we said this was going to produce, because going out the door, the product has to be the same. Because every patient needs to get the same treatment. So I think there needs to be.
It's not the lack of programs, it's the lack of people getting into it.
No, that's not the problem. It's just a lack of. And he said they're good paying jobs. Because there's GMP, we're considered a biologic. Because when you go and talk about GMP is good manufacturing practices, and it's just how FDA says you have to meet that. But there's GMP, we're a biologic, and they're kind of, how's that work? And then there's biologic, the GMP for pharmaceutical, which notches things up a whole other level. There's GMP for food. So we have medical device in the cities. So I think that's kind of the new bandwagon is to start letting kids know that those are out there. Those are the new factory jobs.
So as we're building this community for the next 10 years, and we're hoping to attract biotech companies and have startups, what do you, any words of wisdom, what do you think that we should be paying more attention that we are not?
Oh, I want to say something funny about that. We gotta have a freight elevator in this building. I always tell them that every chance I can.
Are you thinking funding sources? Are you thinking incubator space for labs?
You have to have a launching pad for those of us ready to you know? It's like, you need to start looking. You want people to come in here and grow. Where do we go? Where's our next step? And that's going to be that's the fun part now. If you're really successful, you accelerate it, where's the industrial part? Is Discovery Square going to be ready? You know, I don't know. But we can't, they haven't broken ground, and I've never seen Mayo do anything fast. But they do it well, but not necessarily the fastest. So I think that's the biggest challenge, is where are all these companies going to launch to? Because you're hoping and you know darn right that they're going to be successful. Shruti's got a great one going. And yeah, they're going to go.
Wouldn't you say that the lack of GMP skills can also be an impediment then as well? We cannot get more into the program. Is RCTC part of the conversation? Like offering any kind of programs that we go?
It definitely needs to be.
Maybe that's part of Judy Lundy's conversation that says you need to, because there is a notion of deploying.
So does the University of Minnesota Rochester needs to get that into their program.
Judy Lundy presumably has this thing called growth talent, right? So it's got to be part of the whole strategy to
I think right now in Rochester we have the beauty of having a lot of trailing spouses and a lot of really, really skilled people in this community. But as Rochester grows and the DMC takes off, that supply is going to dwindle. They'll still be here, but they're going to be gobbled up by everything coming in, so we won't see that. So I do, you think you have to start thinking about that now.
All right. I'll cut it off, being the guy who cuts stuff off. So thank you to Judy. That was awesome. Thank you very much.